This weekend, Andy is distilling the vodka, Ryan is drinking the vodka, and we mix it up with some pre-rendered monochrome bananas. I'm Ryan,
I'm Andy.
and this is Weekend Rental, episode 194. All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to a post-Christmas episode. Andy, how'd the holidays treat you?
Not too bad. Yeah, like our bigger family things have not happened yet or have already happened beforehand. But the immediate family thing still is always fun.
Just stayed home and chilled?
Yep, for the most part. This break has gone way too fast, but
yeah, it's
how'd
tough.
It go for you?
Yeah, I would agree. Like, it's tough when the holiday falls right in the middle of the week like that. Like, my wife took the last couple of days off after Christmas. I've been taking this Monday and Tuesday off, so it's like we spend time together, but it's like back and forth with work, and it was good. Yeah, we had a pretty good day. Christmas Eve is typically like our Christmas, like just the four of us, which was pretty good. My son was in fine spirits. My wife likes to remind me that he's like a perfect copy of me. So when he wants to irritate, he just cranks that thing to 11. So we did less like family fun time and more like mom and dad are going to take like a midday nap than we probably would have otherwise, but it was still good. Everybody had a good time. And then my wife's whole side's in town, so we did that Christmas Day, and then we were going to get together with my parents this last weekend, but then my parents got sick, so we just that didn't work out. Now it's like, well, Christmas decorations are down, so now you're just kind of like, let's just pull the fucking Band-Aid off. Like, I don't want to drag it out. Like, meet up, exchange gifts. I think that's happening on the 1st. I don't know, not totally positive. So yeah, pretty uneventful, I would say. It was fine. Kind of weird again here too, because I don't even want to knock on wood because I don't care, but it seems like we're on track for the second year of Christmas doesn't exist in the Midwest, which is kind of wild to me.
Yeah, you mean as far as like how cold it is and
right and
the
snow,
weather? Yeah,
this is one of my topics I was gonna bring up later, but like it was almost 40 degrees on Saturday, and my son and I went ice fishing this weekend, and it's just like, well, you don't really want to go do that when it's 40 degrees because then you get like that layer of ice and melt on top, which is like a slippery shit show. But we ended up saying, I was like, it's too nice not to go, right? Like, I'll just pack my gear, we'll go. Like, anytime you can go and not trudge through like a 1.5 feet of powder to get out there. But we went and did that. And I did that on Sunday with my son, and we went on Silver Lake, which is like 20 minutes away from us. And that is a tiny, tiny lake. Very small. To the point where they have to aerate it. Like, they have like some aeration systems put in to keep fish alive so it doesn't winter kill. And that probably had 9 inches of ice. And like on a normal year, those small lakes are like the first ones that are like locked up, right? So it was kind of shocking. And it's just like, God, I don't know what these people are thinking. Like, I've seen footage of people on Red Lake already putting like ice houses out, and it's just like massive lodges, you know? They're like, we're on like 8 to 10 inches. We'll be fine. It's like, that's not true. Like, you were
not
all
when
nuts.
You have a week like this. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. So like, I don't know. I mean, we had fun, but it was still like that, you know, it was the day after like a really warm day. So everything was just like glare ice, which is just brutal. You're walking out there like hauling a sled and like you don't have any traction. So my lower back and calves were just like killing me, like trying to balance. And we set up, and like that's not it's not a fantastic lake by any means for ice fishing, but it's close. So it's like, you know, it's worth the effort. But all everything out there, beautiful day. I think we caught 2 fish over 4 hours, and I was like, all right, like let's call it. And
you just pull up a bucket type thing and sit out in the open?
So I could have, like, it would have been the type of day to like, yeah, fully just do a bucket and like sit out in the open, because you could have. But I did like the whole thing. Like, we brought the house and everything. But even so, it's like once you have the gear, you're kind of like ready to go. But yeah, we didn't need the ice house at all. You could have just sat out. And In fact, there were several guys doing the whole like just drill a line of 12 holes and like keep working down the ice. But yeah, it was fun to get out. But like, it's weird that we're at January and the ice is that thin and we have no snow cover because it's basically all gone. So,
Yeah. And all of that ice was made in basically a week because it was
right.
like around 0 degrees for a week straight. And then
Yeah.
that was it.
Yeah. We had that one
Yeah.
cold snap right at the beginning of December. Yeah. It's wild. And I've seen several headlines of like cars going through multiple lakes in Minnesota
Hmm.
over the last week. So,
I was complaining to Amanda that it sucks that we live up here, and one of the best things is if you have a lake that freezes over enough to walk on and it's just perfect. I mean, you can skate wherever you want,
right.
do whatever. And I feel like I can count on my hands how many times that's actually happened,
Yeah.
because it's always something like this where the ice or it snows and then the ice gets shitty and then it's
Yeah.
just, yeah.
Or you're instantly getting like that 12 inches on top of it and like you can't do anything. But yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it's been rough, like since, we flash back 20 years when we were kids, like there was always feet and feet of snow. And now, there's like you could snowmobile and do whatever. And now you flash forward and like, I mean, for anyone who knows, Arctic Cat, like the premier, like local old school legend, like they're shutting down manufacturing all over Minnesota
Yep.
because, well, one, what used to be like a everyman's hobby has turned into a $23,000 investment for a toy. But
Yep.
two, on top of the investment, you need a trailer and you need to be able to haul it to the mountains or up in Canada because we just don't get snow. There's no trail riding around here anymore, which is mind boggling.
Yeah. If anything, it's like February,
Yeah.
late January or February before that stuff even comes around anymore, which is crazy. Yeah. It used to be
Yeah.
December.
And when we were kids, you'd be snowmobiling everybody's houses over Christmas break. Like we were just feet and feet of endless snow. And,
Yeah.
but global warming's still not real. So, so it's fine. It's just wild though. Like I hope we get some decent snow. I'd like to take my kids skiing at least once this winter, but I don't know. Like we're on track for another weird one, which in turn means another drought, which isn't good for anybody either around here. But yeah. Yeah. So kind of a weird Christmas holiday break. It was like enough cold, I guess, to feel like we had a winter and a typical Christmas, but still at the same
We're
time.
bitching about not being cold enough.
Right. Yeah. I do like snow on the ground for Christmas. At least we got that. But
Yeah.
yeah. You get any gaming in over the holiday or anything?
A little bit. I'm still getting through Indiana Jones. I'm almost done with that. Maybe next weekend I'll report on how all of that went. But we did get Mario Party Jamboree.
All right.
And we played one game.
Yeah.
Nobody got any stars.
All right.
During the entire game. And then it was just, here's 2 stars randomly given out.
Yeah.
And yeah. So it was basically just like a coin flip at the end of the game.
Yep.
We just wasted all of our time.
Yeah.
To see who won this game. I'll say the mini games are pretty good. There's some pretty good ones in this one.
Yeah. We turn off motion control because we don't want to play with that most of the time. I would say the handful of ones that appear to be quality come up over and over and over again. It is not a deep roster. It is not like they advertise like 120 mini games, most mini games. Like they've sliced and diced it in ways that if you continue to play this, you'll be very sick of even the ones you love. So
yeah. Oh,
yeah,
that's a bummer.
It does feel like the most bullshit game though. Like with as far as like awards and stuff in this one, I don't know. That opening stage is at least entertaining with the Wiggler. I mean, it's a good first stage.
I would say we didn't do that one. We did the Mario Kart one.
Oh, okay. That's personally my favorite because like the only strategy is like power ups, really.
Yeah. And well, what happened was every time anybody got close to the star, they landed on that thing that
the
race was chased away. Yeah. So nobody ever got close to it the entire game.
Yeah, that one almost requires like a 20 round. Or 20 turn.
Probably.
Like, because there's just no strategy in 10, like at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking about what we're doing tomorrow for New Year's Eve, and like all my kids, like, well, we got this plan. Then we're gonna go see Sonic 2 in the morning. But and then it was like, well, we'll play video games and board games in the afternoon. My son's like, no dumb ways to die and no Mario Party Jamboree. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we're
Wow.
doing both of those things for sure. Like, so suck it up. He's just like,
Uh,
he hates it so much, but like he still like gets into the games when we play. So I don't know. We
huh.
had an interesting day around here. I had the day off, and it was just me and the kids, and let's just say we went to that Sweet Shots golf place, and I don't know if there's like ever been a father who's like hucked his kid off like the shot deck over the safety net, but I was pretty close. Like, it wasn't the best. I was like, I took a day off for this. Like, why?
Yeah, I've had a few of those days so far this week too.
Yeah. It's just like, and then I told my wife when I got home, I was like, I remember like having a distinct amount of fear, at least around my parents, to where like I just never would have done that. Like, did we do something wrong? Like, I don't get it.
No, my kids too.
It's got to be a generational thing. I don't know, man. But yeah. Um, well, I played a little bit of games too. Again, sorry for coughing. I don't know why. Like, I've had like a low key cold, but then last night I just like sat in bed like hacking up a lung for like 2.5 hours, which I'm sure my wife
Ooh.
loved, and she was trying to sleep for work this morning. So my throat's been super dry today. But anyway, nothing new. I went back to Sea of Thieves again with my buddy Tom. Been playing. And he's my buddy from overseas, so we have to coordinate. He's over in Norway, and dude, I've never had a game shit on me so much. We played 2 sessions over holiday break, multiple hour sessions. We planned one. It was like we went like 5 hours. Another one we did like 4. Not back to back days, but like within like a 2 to 3 day window. I don't remember how the timing worked out. And for anyone who's played that game, like there's a whole Fortress of the Damned or whatever thing where you can do a quest to get a skull to unlock like basically like a boss run, and then you get treasure payout or whatever. The flip of the coin on it is while you're doing it, there's a giant fucking glowing skull beacon in the sky, so everyone in your game knows you're doing it, which is like the risk reward, right? So we did one. I've done this 3 times with him. It's always been different results. But we do this, and we've been sailing all day, and like he's very adamant about like we're gonna like not trade in our loot. Like, I don't care what quest we've done, we're just gonna like hoard loot up until the end or whatever. And then he's like, so like we've been hoarding loot for I don't know 3.5 hours. And he's like, let's go do Fort of the Damned. I'm like, okay, let's go do it. We run through the thing. Everybody was like super friendly on our servers. Like, nobody came after us. We were allied with a few people. Usually that doesn't work out well either. We beat the thing, get the treasure vault, and then we're getting everything out. And like in the treasure vault is like a bunch of kegs of TNT, but they're not like normal kegs. They're like the treasure vault kegs, which are like, I don't know how many times more powerful, a lot. And I was like, you want me to just like move these out of here and like go blow them up somewhere safely or whatever? He's like, no. He's like, well, I generally don't take them, but they're worth a lot of money, like 10,000 gold each or whatever. I was like, oh. I'm like, well, do you want to do that? Because like, I'm just thinking like, I'm like, he's played more than I have, so I'm like, I leave it up to him. Anyway, I'm on the boat hauling the loot in with like the harpoon, right? And then I start stacking stuff up to get ready to sell it, and I realize like, oh shit, we did take the kegs. Like, we took the powder kegs. And I was like, I don't want these out on the boat front, because if we get hit with a skeleton ship or something, like I'm gonna put these in the back. He's like, no, put them up in the crow's nest, like, which is the the tower on the mast. I was like, okay. I was like, sure, like we'll do that. So I run them up and whatever, and then we're like getting closer to port, and he's like, I want to make sure we sell like the TNT first or whatever. So like, okay, got ya. So we'll do that. So then I get up there and I'm like, well, can we harpoon this from the mast, or like, am I gonna have to run this down, or what's the deal? He's like, no, you can harpoon it. So I'm like, all right, I'll position them so they're easier to harpoon out of the boat, right? Once we get to the outpost. And I set one barrel in a spot. I grabbed the next barrel and seemingly to my eye set it in what I thought was the same spot. No, I must have dropped it off the crow's nest, and it explodes our entire ship sky high. I'm like, I don't know what just happened. And he's just like, we blew up. I'm like, okay, clearly. Like, so we're like 4 hours, 4.5 hours in at this point. And then he's like, well, let's go look for our treasure. I know right where we're at. We'll find the sunken ship. I'm like, okay, fine. And we spawned really close. But apparently, like those powder kegs will like blow your ship into like the next millennia. So it was gone, right? Like 4 hours worth of work gone. He's like, well, we still had another key up there, right? I was like, yeah, I laid the other key so we could do a second run, like on top of the altar in the room that we need to be to, right? So we go back, it's gone, it's despawned. So then, like, already I'm kind of like, I think this is like the universe's sign, right? He's like, well, we could just get another key. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm a dumbass. I blew us up. I feel bad. I'll go with you and get another key. We get another key, start the raid, do the whole thing again. We've sunk another I don't know, like hour and a half, 2 hours in, and then there's the like I don't know what the name of the ship is, but you can like pirate it, and it's like a skeleton ship from hell once you take it over, and like you become like basically the Reaper in the map as the um human players, you know, to destroy everyone else. So mid raid, we hear the music change, which like a lot of Sea of Thieves is like the tonal shift in music, right? And then I look down, like, yeah, like it's a human controlled pirated ship, and they're just blowing the fuck out of our ship, right? So it's just like we wasted all that time again, right? So totally a bummer. And then a couple days later, he's like, yeah, you online? I'm like, yeah, I'm online. I'm like, you want to jump in? So first thing he says again, he's like, you want to do the Fort of the Damned again? I was like, I guess, like, we need to have a redemption arc at this point. And then, you know, same fucking thing. It all goes to hell. I forget what sequence of events happened, but it was just like, in no way in the world was this like, it was just like the most gut wrenching, probably collective 8 hours of gameplay just completely lost with like nothing
Oh
to show
boy.
for it. And I was just like, fuck this game. Like, I was just so pissed. Granted, a big chunk of that was my misstep, but like still, oh my God. Just
Yeah, to punish you that harshly is a little crazy. But I suppose that's part of the,
yeah.
that's part of that game.
Yeah. And
Wow.
I think I've rated that a total of 5 times, 4 or 5 times with him, and I've yet to turn in the bounty. Either the allied crew that we're raiding it with betrays us, or I blow us up, or the ship comes in, or some fucking, catastrophic, skeleton fight. It's just, it's never any shit show with that thing. So I don't
Is
know.
it like people that just camp around that island then?
Yeah, but they don't even have to camp because like you're just a glowing red beacon, right? Like you can see
Yeah.
that you're doing it from anywhere in the map. So yeah. I mean, the best bet we would have had was that first run when we were allied with half the teams, and nobody was expecting me to blow us up, but I did. It's great.
And the fact that you made it all the way right to where you were going to sell them, right?
Yeah, we were like
Yeah.
100 yards away.
Yeah.
Kablammy. So
Well, now you should ask him, what is your, now have I changed the order of which I sell things? Do I sell everything else before the TNT?
It was funny because like when we go back in, he's like, this time we'll leave the powder kegs. I was like, no, like this time we have to double down. Like we have to get them to like redeem ourselves at this point. And then we never even got that far because we got obliterated. Yeah, I'm finding myself in the rhythm of that game. Like I really enjoy it now, but you get runs like that and you're just like, ugh.
That's a little defeating, especially when your time is limited, and then it's like, what did you accomplish, right?
Yes, yeah, and like everything Sea of Thieves requires like a 90-minute block of time. Like there's no quick win, at least not for anything good.
Yeah. Huh.
On.
Well, so when we have an extended period home with the kids, we usually try and knock out a whole franchise of movies that they haven't seen, right?
Please tell me you did Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, we did Fast Furious. We did Harry Potter. We've done Lord of the Rings before.
Okay.
This year we started Transformers, which
yeah.
we're we watched 5 of them,
Oh,
and my brain's a little scrambled now.
yeah. Once you get past 2, the Witwicky
Mm-hmm.
lineage goes a little sideways.
Yeah, boy, those ones with Mark Wahlberg are just terrible.
Well,
I
and sadly, I think the first one he did was the worst. Like, I think 3 is the worst of them all.
So 3 is still Shia.
Still?
Yep.
Really?
So he did the
Why
first
did I think
3,
he only did 2?
and then Wahlberg did the middle 2.
Was 3 where they introduced like the somewhat racist like twin car duo?
No, that's 2.
Yeah, okay.
3 is when the Megan Fox is just
Gone.
just like out of the movie, just like,
okay.
Oh, what happened to her? Last thing we knew, they were basically getting married, and then the next one, it's like
Right.
they don't even mention her.
For some reason, I had it in my head that it all happened in 2 movies where she had like come and gone and was like, oh, by the second. But okay.
And I think I've seen all of them except that last Mark Wahlberg one.
What's
It
the
was like
last
a
one?
King Art.
Dark Knight.
Yeah, well, last night it's like King Arthur and a whole bunch of. Oh my gosh, that one is so bad.
Yeah.
Some of them.
Those that jumped the shark before he got involved, really.
Oh yeah, for sure. But at least they were like, you're just like laughing along with the movie. It's just, they're like bad movies that you can enjoy.
Yeah.
That last one, I had a really hard time with that one. The fourth one, I think, is really bad also, but I think that's one of my favorites just because it is like a bad movie that I love laughing at.
Yeah.
But the fifth one, there's like, they don't even transform. You don't even see Optimus Prime transform once. He turns into a truck at the very end, but you don't even get to see him change.
Is that the one where like they go to it's like a relic Air Force museum, right? And like find the original OG Transformers, or is that the one before?
That I don't remember. This one is like Anthony Hopkins.
Okay. Yeah.
In England, and they go to,
That sounds right.
Yeah, it's not a good one. And I feel a little defeated after that one, where I just feel like I've seen too much explosions. There's so many. These movies are like, oh, we're almost in the home stretch. You can tell this is like the third act of things are about to wrap up.
Yeah.
And then you like, somebody pauses a movie to go make popcorn or something like that. And there's like an hour and a half left in the movie. And then the last hour and a half is just people just in a desert, just things blowing up and screaming at each other.
Yep.
And nothing is actually happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you guys fit the Bumblebee offshoot into that, or did you?
We're planning on that either tomorrow or the next one. I've heard
it's okay.
The Bumblebee one I think I've seen, and that one's pretty good.
It's better than the Mark Wahlberg ones for sure.
And I think the Rise of Beasts, like the one with the ape and all that, that's also in the Bumblebee one now. So
I have not seen that one.
All right.
Or that new animated one. Looks pretty good.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one either. That one's supposed to be pretty good too. But
I'm sure the kids were at least entertained by like the Michael Bay explosion stuff, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's they're the lowest common denominator. At one point, I read over this last weekend that Netflix has a memo that went out that told all program directors that they're supposed to start like having all of their main characters explaining in voice of what they're doing because they can't trust that people are actually watching the movie, like they're on their phone or whatever. So, and that's what I felt this movie was, where there was many times where they're just like Mark Wahlberg or something is yelling at the sky at something. And it's like, yeah, I have eyes. I can see what you're talking about.
Yeah. I wish there would have been like a throwaway line, like at some point where he'd like reference the SNL skit and just been like, "Hey, Optimus, say hi to your mother for me." You know what I mean? Just like break character, even like an outtake at the end. The thing is like he does a very serviceable role. Like he's a pretty underrated actor, I think, in a lot of
In
senses.
some things, yes.
Yes, but he fits pretty well into what is asked of these movies. It's just that the scripts are completely nonsensical at this point, which they always kind of were. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, to continue a franchise like that after it had already like pretty much crushed itself is you're not going to walk out, ahead in that situation.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It's crazy to me that in the later ones, even that you have like Stanley Tucci and Anthony Hopkins, like these are real
Yeah.
actors, and they're in this. What are they doing?
I'm sure like you're gonna give me how much and I have to be on screen for how long? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we'll do that. I'm sure they
Yeah,
got
in the
paid as
last
much as
one,
Mark Wahlberg did.
uh, the one guy, the John Turturro,
Yeah.
he's from the original ones. Like
He's got a pretty
he's in
big
that
role.
last one. That last one, he's just on a phone call. He's in a
Oh,
phone in Cuba for like 2 scenes.
I was
And he's
thinking
not talking to any other characters in real life. It's
okay.
they just paid him to do that one thing for one day. It was amazing.
I was thinking I had the other one confused where he's got like a much bigger role that just doesn't make any sense, but
Yeah, there's
yeah.
some of that too in that other one. Yeah,
That's funny. Well, at least they stopped making them, right? Or the live action ones.
yeah. What's Michael Bay doing now? I mean, he did the Turtles after this. I'm not sure
Those were
what he's
awful.
doing.
Let's not pretend those were good.
Oh, I think they're.
Nah, I think you're crazy. If they were all right, we'd have gotten a third one. They went to left it at a cliffhanger that they couldn't get green lit.
True. That's true.
Speaking of
That's
something,
also funny about this Transformers. They left the last one that they made was like the most obvious. Like we're making another one because this
right.
is, and then they didn't. It was
Someday
great.
they will. Gonna dust everything off. I completely forgot about it, but you jogged my memory with like franchises, and I watched that short-lived 2-week run in the box office. Studio Ghibli, Lord of the Rings, The War of Rohirrim, because it was on Plex, which worked out great because I was gonna pay $30 to get the Blu-ray of it. It's up for pre-order. Glad I didn't do that because it's a movie. It's in the universe. Um, Anyone who's a big fan of like Lord of the Rings, at least movie franchises, will enjoy what's here, but it does nothing to really. I don't know. It does nothing to really like justify its existence or the fact that it's in anime. It gives you like from what I understand, from what I've read, like the main character is sort of written into this film and isn't part of like the actual lore of Tolkien
Okay.
universe, but some of the things that happen and like how Helm's Deep got its name are part of the canon. It's very good. It's like really long though, like 2.5 hours, which
Ooh.
for an anime is a lot. And it's just more of like, I would say it feels like, well, and because of the Helm's Deep aspect, it just feels like a very elongated chapter adding on to, like the two towers and like the hold up at Helm's Deep. And it gives you the context around some of that. And there's some entertaining things that happen, but pretty forgettable, which sucks because I was really looking forward to it. And I can't say that I would recommend it to anyone who isn't like a diehard Lord of the Rings fan, just for like another nugget of like something to watch. But
Does it hook into enough things like that you're familiar with the movie that you can set like, oh, I understand what's kind of like, I can kind of get what's going on? Or is it just kind of completely side story alienation?
No, for sure. Like it's set like according to the opening, like 200 years before the existence of the rings, or before Bilbo gets his hand on the One Ring. So yeah, it leads into like some of like then it ties back to like orcs searching for rings. They tie back into the swamp monster. And then some of the other tribes, the warring tribes that come into play, especially like the elephants or whatever. Like they're not elephants, they're elephants. And then the Helm's Deep, obviously. And those things are like really kind of like ground it. Like if you're familiar with just the film trilogy, the only thing I think that like that they tried to do to like really link it in that just felt uncanny valley was they brought in Saruman at one point. And his animation, like they really fit like the actor who played Saruman, which doesn't fit in with like the facial stuff of like the rest of it. And they used his actual voice samples too. And I think AI generated like, whatever the text.
Mm-hmm.
And it just felt like really out of place. And it's like, well, we tried to do the thing for you, but it felt the most forced. Yeah. But yeah, it will all make perfect sense to anyone, even with like a passing. Like I've watched the trilogy once. So that's good, but I don't know. I wanted more. Like I really expected, especially with Studio Ghibli, like the animation was really good, but it wasn't like outstanding. None of the battle sequences were like amazing. And the soundtrack was kind of like mid, and like, the soundtrack's kind of what like hooks you, right? Like in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but so disappointing.
I wonder how it did for box office wise, because it would be a bummer if this failed, because it's like,
Yeah.
to me, it's fascinating that there's an anime to something like that. They
Yeah.
can do that.
Based
but if
on
this
what I
doesn't
read,
work,
yeah, it did
they're
not
never
do
gonna,
well.
this type of thing's never going to happen again.
Yeah.
Basically,
This thing is basically a failure unless it sells a bunch of Blu-rays or does really well on streaming. Like
Mhm.
box office numbers I read were it's lost money for sure. So, but I don't think they did a good job of advertising it either. Like I just happened to see it on like a YouTube like thing. Like I don't remember seeing big. Although, like, what do you advertise it on? Like, there's no TV anymore, and I don't know. It had the potential. Like holiday season, families are going. Lord of the Rings is a big name, but
yeah, it is overtly anime though. It's like not even
100%.
like rounded off animation like American animation.
No.
So it definitely, like, anybody who sees that with a passing knows what that is and is like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely more like Western audience friendly than like Nino Kune or something, but like it is still just like this is a cartoon. So, if you're not into that, which is going to turn off, a large number of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We watched a few episodes. I haven't finished it because it got pretty violent for the kids, but they remade Trigun. I don't know if you ever heard of that anime back in the day. But they have a really weird animation style in that. It's almost like 3D models, but it looks 2D, but they can still kind of like switch it around into 3D if they want to.
Okay.
And man, the action scenes in that are just crazy. Like what they can do with that,
It's kind of nice when you have that ability to like pivot and like round it out on the fly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you can just set your camera wherever you want then, right? And just go.
That's what this movie didn't do to really good effect, is like there were 3D-ish elements, but it's always just like backdrop. Like they never, which looks cool, but then also like you get the disparity between like the hand-drawn and I don't know, just it never really clicked. It's disappointing. What's Trigun?
I'm sure it'll be on Max. Hulu, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say watch this Lord of the Rings thing if you like Lord of the Rings, but I think it'll be one of those things you ingest once. And I would even argue, controversial as it might be, that Lord of the Rings of Power is a better offshoot or like spin-off franchise. So I know that's pretty contentious.
Yeah, I still have to get into that and watch those.
I think it's worth it for season 2 for sure.
Yeah.
1, yeah. Well, I had one more topic. So because my plans changed and we didn't get together with my family this last weekend, we decided, I was like, well, we got to come up with something, right? Like kids have been hyped. Like we got the weekend off. What are we going to do? And I was like, we got to go do something. And I was like, well, you always think like having to do something means leaving town. I was like, well, we haven't left town in like 5 months. She's like, well, we could go do this thing. I was like, yeah, we'll go do that for an hour. Then we'll be back at the house. Kids are going to be on their place. So anyway, like I was just like, screw it. Like we're going to at least go to Detroit Lakes, right? We're 40 minutes away from home. So we go to, I was like, we'll stop at the brewery. We'll get something to eat. We can do some shopping, go down to the waterfront. And anyway, I went to that mall with the brewery in it, which is interesting in and of itself. But have you been to Ultima Gaming lately in the mall down there?
I know. They've done a whole lot of a whole lot of changing, right?
Yeah. So like it's not even a game store really anymore. He's got like 1/5 of his space is dedicated to like a close off cards and video game store. And then the rest is just the most like Chuck E. Cheese ish arcade, like pay to win sort of thing for the rest of it. And it's wild, like the investment, knowing what those machines cost, what he's put into
Mm-hmm.
that. But like, yeah, it kind of blew my mind. I was like, I can't believe this is here and this is potentially working. I don't know. Like, I don't know how long it's been like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's cool, but it's the typical thing. Like, you're paying a lot of money for credits and you cash them in for cheap Chinese tchotchkes. And
Mm-hmm.
I could see it working for him. He obviously has like a space back there that looks like it's set up to, still house parties and stuff. But um, yeah, I don't know. I did pop into the store a little bit too. And I don't know. Still not my thing. A lot of card heavy stuff. And then a lot of, why don't you bring the thing up to the register and we'll see what this costs on eBay sort of thing. So I'm like, yeah, I'm out.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Well, the biggest bummer is like, he did that arcade and then, Pizza Ranch did the same thing like 2 months later.
Did they do that in DL too?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a fun zone there now too.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I think a town can handle an arcade pretty well, but that's tricky.
Yeah, especially when I've been to the fun zone here. I would say the pay to reward scheme is pretty good. And I would say maybe his setup borderline egregious, but I don't know. You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, they got to pay for the machines. So
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't anything special. It was neat. I mean, I'm sure rent it out for a party. It's a good time, but yeah, I just figured he'd still have like a whole bunch more space dedicated to like the D&D, which was kind of his bread and butter. It seemed like before the pandemic. So the fact
I think
that
he moved
mall,
stores again, didn't they? I think he moved to location to a separate space there, a different space. I don't know.
He definitely got like an adjacent space. Like he had the space he had, but then like what must have been what was next door is now quote unquote the game store, and then the rest is like the arcade. So
sure.
Yeah. It was interesting. My kids had good time for like the few games they played, and he still had retro inventory. Like I'm not gonna, anytime you can walk into a game store and there's like Master System games and
that's cool.
Complete in Box, Nintendo and Super Nintendo. It's neat to see. I don't know how much that's moving. I think even when I was in there, it seemed like kids were just buying Magic cards or Pokemon cards. So,
is the Toy Finder people still there?
I drove by. I didn't even look over.
I wonder.
Yeah. The interesting thing was kind of like a side tangent. We went to go eat and like the place we wanted to go was packed. So we're like, well, what are we going to do? And then we see like Godfathers. It's like, oh, I haven't been to Godfathers. Like they're all closed around here. Like, let's go to there. So we go and it's a shithole. Like I was worried that we were going to get like sick. The food was actually really good. But I got greeted by a dude and then like, he's just like really talkative, right? Like, hey, how was your guys' Christmas? Or I was like, good, man. Like, how was yours? Just like the thing. And then like, I thought he was like playing us at first. And he's like, it was great. I got like a wagon and I went to see Mufasa and I like quickly realizing like, oh, he's not joking. Like I'm in at that point. And then I realized that I think I bought, I think this is the same guy that I felt guilty about like 5 years ago, where I bought a TurboGrafx 16 off of Craigslist and then like talked the guy down $40 and then felt bad because I think he might have been. And then I realized like, yeah, this is the same guy and he's definitely.
Yeah.
And I felt super guilty all over again. Like, I was like, what are the odds?
Yeah.
Just can't live with myself. I'm a despicable human being. To be fair, like all those conversations were happening over text, so I didn't know. But yeah, not great. Pizza's good though.
Yep.
And the dude really seemed to
I
like
haven't
his
been
job.
to Godfathers in forever. Wow.
Yeah. Well, that I'd never been in that one. Like, and it's like weird, like up on the second floor and like the building that hasn't been remodeled in ages and how it's hanging in there. I don't know. There were quite a few people up there though.
Huh.
Yeah. Good old deal.
Well, I went to an arcade too.
Oh.
The Grandpa's Arcade that is in my hometown.
Yeah, back open, huh?
Yeah, he was open for a few days this break. We picked one of them, went down there, and he's got a lot of new stuff in there too. Some new games. He, he's just finding room. He's just like, oh, what is this little space back? I mean, it's behind the counter now. Like, there's games you go play behind the counter now. So he's just packing them in there, and yeah, at this point, it's too many racing games. There's too many. He's got 5 Cruisin' USAs in there.
Wow. Linked together?
They're not all linked together. There's 2 of them that are linked together, I think. I mean, like 3 Hydro Thunder, 2 Hydro Thunders, and then like the new version.
Okay.
And then, yeah, there's Daytonas and a couple other weird racing ones. There's a lot of racing games. If you want to sit down at an arcade, this guy's got you covered.
It's a lot of real estate. Those cabinets are not small.
No. And it got pretty hot in there throughout the day. Like it's a packed area, and these things are running all day long. But they are some. I mean, he's got a Mario Brothers. He's got all the old classics in there now. So he's got a genuine arcade, I would say.
Okay. Still does the flat rate like all day play.
Yep, $10 a person.
Wow,
like you can't argue with that at all.
No.
Like that's so cheap. And some of them are new. I mean, like there's a few Raw Thrills games in there, you know, and like Time Crisis 4, which is pretty new. So there's some good stuff in there.
Sorry,
but
yawning mid podcast yawn. That's cool. Did you take the whole family then, or just?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That's really cool.
And it's small enough where you're just like, well, kids go play something, you know,
right?
Where it's not like it's compact area. You kind of can keep track of them a little bit.
So. Oh yeah, most arcades are in like questionable areas. So to be in like a small town where even if they run out to the sidewalk, odds are they're fine.
Yep.
So what was like the turnout like then besides you guys? Like a lot of people?
It was a little bit less than the first time we went, but there was still a decent amount of people in there. I'd probably say 40 people probably went through.
Okay. Nice. Does he sell like snacks or concessions at all too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can get like a frozen pizza and do all that stuff too, but
it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
You got to check that out at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have to like go on their Facebook or something and to figure out like when they're going to be open, the next open free play day or whatever.
What's the name of that one again?
Grandpa's Arcade.
Grandpa's Arcade.
Yeah.
Sounds cool. Yeah, I want to check that out at some point.
Yeah. And then today, it's funny because you said that, oh, we got to get out of town. We have to get out of town.
Right.
We went to Fargo. We're like, we got to get out of here. We got to get to Fargo.
Sure.
Today. So it's a little bit of the opposite. And we went to Brewhalla. That was the first time I've been there.
Nice. I walked through there in like 15 minutes with my kids, and then we couldn't decide on what to eat, so we left.
Oh, really? So, what time?
11:45, maybe.
That's when we got there.
I probably just missed
hilarious.
you. Yeah, I probably just like we walked around because like my son was like, I want ramen. I was like, all right, well you can get the pho, and then yeah. Anyway, I was just like, no, I'll just go somewhere else. But yeah,
that's funny.
So what did you think?
Yeah, I had ramen.
The gentrified brewery there.
Yeah, it's all right. Not a lot of people in there today, but I guess that's. I mean, like I said, it's noon on a Monday, so
yeah. It's funny that we missed each other by that much. Yeah, I just like I love that brewery, but I hate that Brewhalla like market place. Like it's just it's the most pretentious thing. Like you walk in, there's a guy shucking oysters. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? We're in North Dakota. How fucking fresh are these? Like, fuck
And
off.
somebody who woke up in the morning just to make dog biscuits in the
Yeah,
morning.
the dog biscuit, like the fucking plant store. I don't know. Like, it's cool. It's a cool concept, but like, especially with the kids, like no meal there is cheap. Like you're spending $10
No.
minimum. You know what I mean? Even if you
And
get
the only
pizza,
one that the kids even thought about was the unicorn
right? Burger
one
place.
that just had burgers. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other ones were all like, oh, that's icky adult food. So
Yeah. How was your pho or ramen or whatever?
my ramen was good. Yeah.
Did you get the buns at all? The bao buns?
No, I should have.
The pork belly bao buns are very good.
Yeah.
What do you think of the aesthetic? Would you go back or?
I don't know. With kids, there was like not much to do at all.
Right.
They didn't give a shit about pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Even like we went up top and they were really excited to see all the pinball games, half of them which were off.
Sure.
And then told them, no, these are not free to play like MGC.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at my wallet. I had no dollars. The change machine said, this is broken. Go talk to a bartender. There was no bartender on the second floor at all.
Right.
So I was like, we're not playing pinball today, I guess. So
Yeah. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong, but like that market expansion of Brewhalla feels like the thing that will tank their brewery. Like I don't see how that multi-million-dollar investment is paying off. I can't imagine those tenants are making that much money day over day. Like you said, you walk in there today, because when we did the tour too, I think there was 10 people in there, maybe.
Yeah.
And that was probably counting a couple workers. So
yeah. I mean, what are they buying from those specialty stores at that point? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's like that art store and stuff. Like, I don't get it. Did you have any beers at least?
No.
No?
Couldn't. I tried to get Amanda one. She was on board for a little bit, and then she saw the menu and it was too overwhelming, and she's just like, I won't have one.
You gotta go for
it's like, well,
whatever the fruit or like the frozen smoothie ones are that like come out like a slushy. That's the reason to go up there, because like they always have a couple on tap and they're delicious.
Well, now she's going to listen to this and she's going to be very mad that she didn't know that was a thing there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because like my son just kept talking about ramen. I was like, not everybody wants to eat ramen, but like, well, like, how about we go to Brewhalla? And then we walk up there and I was like, here's the list of stuff. And he points to like a bag of chips on the wall. He's like, I want those chips. I'm like, we're leaving. Like, I'm not spending $15 per meal here when like clearly you don't care what you want. You just want chips. Like, we're going. So, yeah, we ended up going to Izumi, which was very good. All you can eat, and then he got his pho there. So, yeah. What else do you guys do in town?
We went to Costco, which was an absolute nightmare.
There was so many
people there.
Yeah. Well, town right now, just in general, with kids being off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did. After we bailed on Market or Brewhalla Market, there we went and did an hour of sweet shots, and which was pretty fun because like that's about the time the snow picked up, just like smacking balls out into the snow. But then we learned that their like machines are like hypersensitive. So every time like a snowflake would go in front of like the sensor, it would just like kick out another ball. So you'd be like swinging and like balls would be flying out at your feet. And the bay next to us had nobody golfing. And I shit you not, by the time we were done there was like 100 golf balls just like sitting on that green. Just been kicking balls out like every 5 minutes. It was great. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Well, at least we can check that off our list next time we want to do like a in-town get-together. We can skip Brewhalla. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something. I had to check it out once at least.
Yeah. It is really cool. I still love the original brewery side of the business. I don't know. That market hall just reminds me of like everything it took like all the yuppie, like fart huffing parts of downtown and like move them into like one arguably cooler location. But like when you centralize it like that, it's just overwhelming. I don't know.
Yeah. When you have a store for plants and a store for dogs, and not really anything else for kids, drinks and stuff, it's kind of a turnoff for families.
You didn't
I
like
would
the
say.
imported cheese market? My son like ran
Yeah.
up to that glass case. He's like, "Salmon, Dad, $20 a pound." I'm like, that's great. Like,
Wow.
let's just keep going. Yeah. God, that's so funny. It would have been great if we'd ordered food and like just like all of a sudden coming around the corner. Oh my God, what are the odds that we ran into each other there? It's funny.
Right. And well, now that you're saying that you were at Sweet Shots, we were driving right there, and that's like when it was snowing. It was like, holy cow, it started snowing
Yeah,
here, and we got off at that exit, but we went
nice.
over
Went the
toward
opposite way.
Osgood more. Yeah.
Yeah. Fargo.
Huh.
Well, are we at staff picks time?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'll go with mine because mine's very short and it kind of ties into yours. I just put Tito's, like Tito's vodka. I don't know. Like, so for anyone who's listened to this podcast for a long time, like after I did keto, like I was on a big keto kick a few years ago, like I just kind of quit drinking beer. I haven't really drank much since then, but like when I do drink, I'm always like cheap and I'm like, well, I want something that's like low calorie, like mix like with, like a LaCroix or whatever, like a bubbly water. So typically for me, that's just been Bacardi because it's cheap. Like virtually, I'm not pretending any alcohol with any mixer is good for a person, but that's what I'll go for generally. And then like I don't know why, but over Christmas break, like we were doing the usual thing, like, well, we got to bring beer to this thing or that thing. Like I'm like, oh, Tito's was on sale, so like I've heard good things. Like we'll just grab that, right? And it turns out like that's really good vodka, and like it's super smooth. And because like I'm a cheap ass, so I've only ever like bought like UV was like or Smirnoff, like really breaking the bank. So it turns out Tito's is really good. Like, and I'm not gonna buy it every day, but makes a really good cocktail, and you can use the same like low calorie mixings, and it's good.
Hmm.
It doesn't have like the harsh like cheap additives and like awful like hangover elements of like a crappier. Well, not that I'm drinking that much anyway, but like of a crappier, lower quality booze. So yeah, I don't know.
Well,
Good.
and that's surprising. Like when you're mixing it with like LaCroix, who already kind of doesn't has a not much of a flavor profile already.
Yeah,
That it's still the vodka is behind that is says a lot.
yeah. That's what Jill doesn't drink much either, but like we drank some of that over Christmas break, and she's like, yeah, this is like surprisingly like super smooth. So yeah.
Huh.
So yeah, I'll drink a little bit more of that before, first of the year when everyone goes straight and sober and eats better for as long as we can make it. So
I'll have to
Tito's,
try that.
feel
I,
yourself in style, I guess. I don't
we
know if
went
that's
to
even stylish.
well, I think they still advertise quite a bit. I don't know.
I don't know.
I went to a hunting banquet last year, and they must have been the the liquor guy must have had a lot of Tito samplers because they were just giving those things away like crazy. I have
Nice.
so many little bottles of Tito's around here.
One in your morning coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not much of a mixed drink guy, but I'll have to try one.
Yeah. And I'm kind of like ever since that keto thing, like I just never got back into like anything canned. I just can't do
Hmm.
beer and stuff still years later.
Hmm.
Yeah. So how about you? Probably a more liver healthy pick.
Well, it has to do with vodka. So what a crazy thing that we ended up on same thing.
Perfect.
Mine is about making vodka. It's a board game called Distilled, and it's you're running a distillery, making a variety of different like moonshine, vodka, whiskey, all that stuff. There's a lot of stuff from around the world too that I've never even heard of, which is pretty cool, I guess. And kind of the mechanic in this game that's interesting is you get yeast and you get water and some sort of grain or fruit or some sort of plant thing
Yep.
as cards. They're all on cards as a resource, and for each grain or whatever you have in your plant, your drink you're trying to make, you add one card of alcohol. Then you mix up that whole deck, take two out, and that's basically your outcome of what you brewed.
Okay.
So then you have to look at like all the recipes that you have unlocked and see like if any of them qualify as that drink, and then you get points obviously if you could make a good whiskey or whatever. And if you can't, it's always, moonshine, which is not not the most points or whatever.
Well, it can make you blind, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I kind of, in some ways, it's like a really deep like a strategy game where you're really thinking ahead on everything. Yet there's that one thing in the middle where it's just like whatever random cards you get, that's the drinks that you make. So it's interesting. Yeah.
It's resourceful, right? Like you're using what you have on hand. So.
Yep. Yep.
How long of a play session does that take then?
It's not too bad. It's 7 rounds, so you're only doing 7 drinks, basically 7 batches of drinks, and I think once you know like kind of the flow of how a round goes, it would go really fast. It says like 30 minutes per person, so
okay.
For how big and heavy the box is, that's surprising that it would be that short. But yeah, I could see it. I think we were probably more like an hour and a half, just me and Amanda playing, but we also didn't really know what we were doing most of the time.
Yeah, that learning curve to like getting into a new game is always rough.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds fun.
Yep.
Plus, it's always kind of nice when you have like a little bit of randomization in a game like that, where it's like, well, even if you are super good, like it's all what you're dealt, right? Like, so anybody can come in with the same understanding and do okay.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Once it all comes down to like if you made that or not, because
yeah,
it's pretty fun. And then finding, matching it up. You pick a person at the beginning of the game to be. Amanda was basically like an old lady from Kentucky making bourbon, like she has a bourbon thing. And so she has a secret recipe that she can make this special bourbon,
Sure.
And I was the Canadian whiskey guy. So
nice.
Yeah. But yeah, good components. Like you get like trays and everything. The box is crazy heavy. It's pretty good.
Do you find that online or do you find that in the store?
I found it on, forget what website it was. You can get it on most places.
Sure.
Maybe not in store, but most game stores will have it. I think it's rather expensive, maybe $70-$80 normally, maybe, but I think I got it on sale for $40, maybe.
That's not too bad. Like you said, if it's well built.
Yeah.
I keep getting that stuff displayed on my Facebook Marketplace. It always makes you think of you, where it's like that new company that's selling like the interior box magnets and like the wall plate. So you just like take your favorite board games, and, like put them up like wall art.
Oh, yep.
I'm like, that's cool, but that box is going to deform over time. It's like you're basically paying the money to ruin your box.
Right.
Good idea, but
for the most part, a lot of board games are the same size. Mm-hmm. I can't stand that they're all, some of them are, an inch bigger on one side, or you look at the video game shelf and even the amiibo shelf you have in the background there, where it's like everything is uniform and fits.
Except that guy right there, he's got that red tag. I hate that little red tag. Oh, there's one there too. I don't like that one either. Damn you, Nintendo. Yeah, it is tough with board games. It's like you can't have like a uniform closet. Like it'd be nice to, and then especially if you're getting like the cheap, like Milton Bradley stuff with like the long boxes, like none of that makes any sense compared to anything. So damn it.
So Wild West, they haven't figured that out yet. They should.
Yes, it should all be a standard size. Maybe we can get some legislation passed. Can we reach out to Doge and see if they can like pass something down to like unify this?
If I'm buying Switch games that have no cartridge in them and it's nothing in there, I can buy a board game that has a bigger box than it needs to be. Come on, just
yes, for the sake of our closets and shelves, everybody, come on, get on the same page.
If you're having a good time with us at Weekend Rental, I think you might enjoy all the great geeky stuff found on the Geekade Podcast Network. They've got podcasts about games, music, movies, and more. Plus, if you order off their secret menu, also known as the Geekade Patreon, you just might find an exclusive movie podcast hosted by Ryan and myself. Check it out over at geekade.com. And hey, if you'd like to turn Weekend Rental into a true multimedia experience, our YouTube and Twitch channels might just be for you.
So, Weekend Rental is a game we pick for a given system. Andy and I will both play it, give our opinions as to whether we would buy, rent, or burn that game. And by burn, we mean light it on fire. The system of choice this go round is the Game Boy. And the game is Donkey Kong Land. This came out well into the Game Boy's life cycle. It is, I think, all three in this entry. I think the third one in Japan might have been on Game Boy Color, but all three in the US are the upgraded Super Game Boy compatible games. So if you're playing them on the Super Game Boy, you get added color and graphic enhancements, which you also get if you're playing on Switch Online, which is what we did. I assume I didn't ask you, but that's what I did. Yeah, this is a miniaturized version. There are 3 entries, 1, 2, and 3 of the Donkey Kong Country games on Super Nintendo, 1, 2, and 3. And this kind of is the Game Boy counterpart of that first game. And it's impressive in the way that it maintains the graphical fidelity and most of the gameplay in its transition over to like much older and crappier hardware.
Yeah, and most importantly, like smaller screen. Like they kept the sprites basically the same size, but still made a working game on a small screen like that. It's crazy.
Which fundamentally changes the gameplay too, right? Because like, I mean, even Donkey Kong Country wasn't a game you wanted to rush through, but like this is very much like a creep yourself to the edge to know what's coming sort of game.
Yeah.
But given the limitations, that sort of makes sense. And I feel like they did a pretty good job of balancing the game with that in mind, to be fair for the most part, with like enemy placements and how things were going to work out. It didn't really hinder my gameplay. It just feels like it's a slower approach than, you know, a run and jump platformer.
Yeah. But yeah, exactly. It's a slower approach, but ultimately I think the difficulty is easier.
Yes.
In this game.
Yeah.
Which is, I think is good for a Game Boy game. I mean, when you're thinking about something you're playing in a car or something like that, you can't have something that's crazy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And they did a good job for the most part. I mean, there's some weird exceptions, but most of those levels are right where you'd want them. I'd say that like 110 to 150 range in length. You know, they're not very long levels.
And like the collectibles are like on your path for the most part. Like there might be a short offshoot or something like that, but it's not like I had to roll in the original one where you had to like jump and roll at the same time to get on this tree and then go left, keep jumping trees over to find them. You know, they're basically kind of on the way.
Yeah, there's a lot more of I noticed there was a lot more like the timed gimmicks, right? Like you enter a room or you enter a section and like a extra life balloon will fly up. And like if you weren't anticipating and like reacting quick, there's a lot more of that. But yeah, I agree. For the most part, they really hand a lot of stuff to you, which is fine. Because again, yeah, this is a platform game on a really old portable handheld. I will say the one thing like to note though, having played this on original hardware, like I can't tell you how much of a better experience it is to play this on like emulation or the Switch, where you don't have like that screen blur and like the non-backlit issue, because it's a muddy game on the original hardware. Like there's no doubt about that. It's still totally amazing and a showpiece, but this is definitely the way to play it on a modern screen. So
yeah, I mean, when you're taking pre-rendered 3D assets and putting it back there, yeah, you kind of want them as crisp as you can get them, I guess.
Yeah. And, you know, some noticeable compromises, like you said, like the screen size being smaller, one character on screen at a time. You can have both DK and Diddy Kong, but they're, you know, get hit, replace themselves. They're not both on screen at the same time. not really like Donkey Kong Country style boss encounters, more like
Hmm.
mini challenge rooms, not like a big, sprite or CPU hugging boss on screen. But they did at the same time too make some interesting changes in a way that was fun. Like, just some new additions, like in particular that like chase squid thing in some of those underwater levels, like where you're just constantly being like run down by an enemy. Like that wasn't in Donkey Kong Country, but it fits really well in the context of this game. Um,
Yeah, the water levels actually control pretty good in this, and I
yeah,
even the original Donkey Kong Country are pretty good for that. But this I think is even better.
yeah. The only thing where it fails is like obviously there's no like foreground water effect. So some of those levels where you're not in like a coral setting, like the only indicator that you've just entered an underwater world is like your character sprite is now like doggy paddling on the screen. But
Yeah,
otherwise, you wouldn't know you're underwater like at all. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So it's weird.
yeah, that's true. So from what I got out of this, the only way you could save the game is if you got all four letters.
Oh, is that true? I didn't
I
even notice
I
that.
think I
That might
think
make
so.
sense. Yeah.
Um, which is crazy that like you're hiding like saving your progress behind
I
collectibles,
guess
but
that's why they made them so much more frequent. But yeah, I guess I never noticed the consistency on when that popped up. But I do think you're right. Yeah.
yeah,
Huh.
that's funny. That's your reward. You get to save.
Find all the Kong letters and you succeed. I will say, like, the extra life thing. Like, I don't know what that counter was at the bottom because, like, instead of like lives, like a one ups, you just like have these big hearts on the bottom of your screen.
Hmm.
Like, I had the thing maxed out in no time. Like, they were just handing out extra lives. Like, I don't know how many that was, like 20. I was like, I'm clearly not going to have any trouble beating this game. So,
Right. And as long as you fall in a pit, you usually end up with enough barrels too that even if you
yes.
get hit, you're switching out enough in the same level that it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. They're very liberal with the barrels and like the mid, in the quote unquote longer levels, like the mid game checkpoints are pretty. Some
Hmm.
games have like three, or some of us have like three. So
Yeah.
it's it's generous in the right ways there, for sure.
It's kind of weird to think about that, like, yeah, like you said, a level that's basically 2 minutes long has checkpoints,
Hmm.
you know, it's kind of ahead of its time in that regard, where fast loading, like really short level.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
they
what,
definitely thought about it more so than most people would have, with
hmm
the throwaway, because like really this was kind of a throwaway title. The Game Boy was already well and dead by the time that this thing came out. Game
the
Boy,
Super Nintendo. I mean, the Super Nintendo was almost dead
yeah,
when those came out. And then they're like, well, let's also port some kind of like make the versions of this on Game Boy, which seemed ridiculous at the time,
yeah,
but they're pretty good.
yeah. Well, I mean, to the point where like when these came out, like they weren't even on my radar. Like I was so beyond what a Game Boy was. Like these were things I revisited, 20 years later as a
Yeah.
collectibles.
I, th- I wonder if like Pokemon didn't come out, maybe these probably didn't happen. Like that
Sure.
rejuvenated the Game Boy so much that I think they were putting more stuff on it. But
Yeah, well, that's true. They probably like hopped on the bandwagon too because they're like, wait, you can make yellow cartridges. What if
yeah,
instead of
there you go.
Pikachu, it was DK on the cover, like banana yellow? Got any more of them carts, Nintendo? Yeah. The not only like is the visual aesthetic like basically like transferred phenomenally well, but like also the soundtrack for the most part
Hmm.
really did really well on the limited sound chip that the Game Boy had. Like, I mean,
Yep.
obviously you're not going to get like synth and depth that you have on the Super Nintendo, but like those tracks were still there, like in very recognizable form.
Yep. Same tracks. Yeah, for sure. You would think that they would probably just make new music for it, but
Hmm.
no, they tried, and for the most part, they got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. The what was I gonna say? I forgot now, but yeah, I had a lot of fun with these. But I mean, I I didn't play long enough to see a minecart level. I don't know if it probably could not
No.
handle the speed or that type of that small screen. They're probably just like, yeah, this just doesn't work for gameplay purposes, really.
Yeah. I didn't either. Now that you mentioned, I got through the first three worlds. I kind of ran out of steam after World 3, which is like that underwater one, because it's just like these are my
That's where I
least
got to
favorite
too.
levels too, and it's like you shouldn't have front loaded them this hard,
Yeah.
but it was fine.
They at the beginning they kind of mix them up quite a bit. You do the forest, you're on the ship now, and then you do this, and so they mixed them up quite a bit where they were recognizable from the Donkey Kong Country versions too. But
Yeah,
at least you didn't play them all in a row either.
yeah, it's just kind of mind boggling, like how well this does work. Like, it just on every level it shouldn't, and it's just a very good pick up and play, like perfect platformer game for the Game Boy. Um, Even if it is just
Well,
trying to like cash in on like Big Brother's success, like these are incredibly well done.
yeah, yeah, and considering like the investment that Nintendo or Rare made to make those, they partnered with some huge computer thing, right, to make
Yeah.
those 3D games, 3D renders.
Hmm.
And then for those to like be scaled down to a Game Boy is just like wild to think about. Like the most cutting edge technology at the time is
Yep.
on a Game Boy.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy. Yeah. I mean, it's even crazy to think that they did that back on this, like, really that investment they did to like really gamble on like a dying platform. The fact that they did take off the way they did on Super Nintendo is,
Yeah.
I mean, they rightfully so. They were gorgeous, right? But like, what a brilliant like roll of the dice and to have it all work out the way it did.
Yeah. And how short lived that was too, because I mean, obviously 3D was
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah, I feel like everyone was like, "Ooh, wow, Donkey Kong Country," and then the next year we were all playing PlayStation. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
it was literally that close.
Yep.
To the point where
But
like
then
most
you,
of us didn't care about the sequels. Even like Diddy Kong, that one did okay. Like the second
yeah,
one,
and the Dixie one or the
Dixie
Baby
Kongs.
Kong one, that
Yeah.
was terrible.
Oh
But
God, wow. Yeah.
the you used to have people that argued that though. They would be like, "Oh, but yeah, PlayStation's out, but look at Donkey Kong. Look at that 3D. They are so far ahead in 3D." And it's like, yeah, it's a little bit different.
He's still going left to right there. Like let's simmer down now. Yeah. Yeah. It really did like bring that console back into people. Like it's funny too. Like in retro, and I know we're getting off topic from the game, but like in retrospect, when you think about that, like I think Donkey Kong Country was the last game that like wowed me, right?
Hmm.
And then Yoshi's Island came out, and it just like was so far from the game that I wanted for a Mario World sequel that like it was just like it was maybe the last game that I even tried to pick up the Super Nintendo before I just kind of abandoned it growing up.
Yeah. And that one was way at the end.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, it looked good, but yeah, the gameplay was like, what were we doing here?
Yeah. We like crying babies. Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Nights into Dreams was the thing that really blew me away.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think the demo of that was just amazing to me. I mean,
Yeah.
Sonic Adventure too, or those that when that came out on the Dreamcast, that was like, okay, this is
Yeah. I remember like playing it endlessly, like in that media play kiosk nights into dreams, that demo. I
yep.
would just like have my mom drop me off there while she had God knows what around town. I would just stand there for hours playing that one level on loop, and then you fought the clown, and I was like, this is great. Like Sega's the future. And then like before I could even get my hands on one, that thing was already dead. So
I don't even think I ever got that far to even know like what I was supposed to do in that game, but
I don't think they knew what you were supposed to do in that game. Sega. Well, now that we've sufficiently gone down a rabbit hole, back to Donkey Kong Land. I suppose we should give it a rating. What are you going to put this thing on the Byron and Burn scale?
this is a buy. I mean, this is I think I kind of ignored these because I'm like, yeah, they were, whatever. But the when you sit down and play it and how breezy it is. I mean, it's just like
Mm-hmm.
it's almost on the level of like a Kirby game almost.
Yeah.
And those are so good on Game Boy to begin with. So like if you're making callbacks to that style of gameplay, it really is good. And then yeah, it's got all the levels. I mean, it's got the assets and all the things. It's so reminiscent of the Super Nintendo version, where I can't think of another 16-bit to Game Boy port that was that anywhere close to like that.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a buy. How about you?
Yeah, I a second. I again, yeah, like you said, like these were way out of my radar growing up, but you pick them up now and they're more than just a showpiece. They're like well crafted. They are showpieces, but yeah, they're the perfect portable platforming game. Pick up, go. Not too stressful. Not a ton of cheap deaths. Ample life and save options. So yeah, these are great. Like shockingly great for what they ran
Yep.
on. It's wild.
And then yeah, I don't know if I've played the other two, so I don't know if they even made it even more buttoned up in the other two or not. But
I assume it dips around 3 once they introduced. It dipped in Donkey Kong Country. I did hear that on the Japanese version of the Switch Online store, they got the Game Boy Color version of 3, which is supposed to have
mm,
better colors. Didn't come out here for whatever reason, though.
huh?
So I'll probably check out the second one for sure. I fully plan on beating first one. I got pretty close. I'm over 50%, I think. But
I mean, I think that's the one downer. Maybe is it's probably only a 2 hour game at most,
yeah,
right?
it does seem like every level is like 3% off of your total.
Yeah. So
Yeah. But that's what you want on a portable. Like, I
mhm.
mean, it doesn't need to be a 20-minute like Kirby game, but like 2 hours is plenty for
Yeah,
that. Assuming there's a new game plus too. No.
yeah. Hmm.
Well,
That's gonna do this show. I hope everyone that's listening had a happy holidays, happy New Year. Can't believe it's 2025 already.
mhm.
Really feeling my age, kind of in reference to other things. I think it doesn't help with talking about things like this where it's like, oh yeah, this game's good. Freaking 30 years 30 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, you can email us at weekendrentalpodcast@gmail.com. We've got a Blue Sky account. Yes, we're on Twitter.
Mhm.
But I think that's gonna do it. Oh, yeah, sign up for the Geekade Patreon. Let us go in depth on Ryan's staff pick from last week or last episode of Saturday the 14th. So if you want to hear a more in-depth talk about that, that's on the Geekade Patreon. I mean soon.
Well worth it. Having watched it a second time recently, movie holds up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But until next time, be kind, rewind.
Bananas.
Donkey Kong Land bananas.